It was the announcement of Beats by Geere that announced the new project Daisy. So the announcement came with the news that Topspin CEO Ian Rogers is transitioning to become the CEO of this newly formed entity, as well as the CEO of Mog. So Daisy will actually be built on top of Mog, a streaming service that Beats acquired last year. And but Topspin fans shouldn't fear, because the platform will actually be expanded and will receive substantial investment from Beats as well. So there's a good chance actually there's going to be some sort of collaboration between Daisy and Topspin in the future. So guys, first of all, let's talk personalities. This creates a very interesting executive group with Ian Rogers as CEO and Trent Reznor as Chief Creative Officer. So, Will, what do you think about this, this sort of executive system, and what do you think these two guys can bring to a streaming service?
Yeah, obviously it's a great news for Daisy and the service. Ian's obviously a very experienced digital music guy. I think just in general, Jimmy Iovine and Dre, they pulled off something very significant with the Beats headphones, which was making a real niche product, which is a $300 pair of headphones, into something that's very desirable and a mass consumer product. So I think collectively that those guys with Ian and Trent, it's going to be interesting to see what they bring from the kind of artist side. Streaming, obviously, paid for streaming is still a niche service, much like very expensive headphones were. So obviously got a great track record in doing that. However, unlike premium headphones, they're not coming into this market as the only game in town. Spotify have been around a long time, RDO well funded, Deezer likewise, and Rhapsody, etc. So there's a lot of players already here. And a lot of them are making a pretty decent effort at curation, whether that's via Spotify's apps, the deep Facebook integration. All of these services have got. So I think it's not going to be easy, but it's always exciting to see another entrant, especially one with such a combined array of talent that Daisy are going to be bringing to the table. So it's going to be exciting to watch.
Yeah, and Duncan, like from a technology standpoint, what do you reckon is there's almost like a bit of a standoff between Spotify, which is very much tech-driven, and Daisy, which have much more of a an artist-driven perspective, and of course with Ian and Trent being on board as executives. How do you see that panning out?
Well, I think Spotify would probably disagree that they don't have an artist-driven perspective. But I do take your point. They're very much they very much started out almost as a technology company, doing stuff with music. I think what's going to be interesting to see is how it works on a functional level, what the experience is like for the consumer, because that's going to be absolutely key as to whether this dies on the vine like absolutely every other streaming service has so far that isn't Spotify, or whether it can actually compete. And it is entirely possible that it's going to be different around the world. I mean, I'm based in Sweden, and Spotify is absolutely everywhere. There's nobody who doesn't use Spotify here. It's huge. And so probably their chances of penetration here, unless they do something very spectacular, is pretty small. But America is still a relatively untapped market, and that seems to be very much where they're hitting first, even though they've said they've got global ambitions. I reckon that they've got more of a chance in America than anywhere else.
Yeah, and David, let's look at it from a label standpoint. What do you think this executive team can bring to the table in terms of helping labels expose their artists, maybe more so than other streaming services have done in the past?
I mean, it's kind of tricky, because obviously at the moment we're talking about something that doesn't exist. I mean, kind of who knows really? Obviously, Topspin have done a lot, but really, Topspin's business was aimed at artists and managers, not labels. So from my point of view, it's kind of not really coming from that point. I mean, they've talked a lot about how artist friendly they're going to be or want to be, but they haven't talked about in any specific what that actually means. So who knows? Like a lot of the controversy that surrounds Spotify, which personally I think is completely unfounded, but neither here nor there, is how much they pay to artists. And I don't see how these guys are going to change that, because I think it's a relatively established thing. So so it's not in terms of payment; it's in terms of what then. What new are they bringing to this table? They have a great team of people that are doing really good at talking. They have a great hype crew. basically, is what they've assembled. Like, and no disrespect to that. Like, people like Ian and Trent obviously are really, really good at talking about technology and music.
Yeah.
As well, but there's still so much that needs to be kind of proven with what they're doing. Like, Moog as a service was like fine, but really kind of didn't. It wasn't a successful service. Yeah. So it's right. Okay, so that's if we strip all of the hype away, right, that's the starting point. Like, we've got Moog and we've got some aspects of Topspin. Those two things put together don't excite me. So what more are they going to add to it that makes this a really interesting proposition? And I think there's still so many questions left, not even unanswered, but not even asked yet.
Absolutely, and one of the things as well is that we were talking last week with David Riley and Clyde Smith about how Spotify could have done more for artists in terms of exposing listeners not just to the track itself via stream, but to create more integrations and some synchronicity with merchandise and other ways of allowing artists to earn money, because we all know that it's taken such a long time to actually negotiate the rates for the streams that Daisy is not going to have much of a chance of renegotiating those or moving away from that particular business model. I think it's going to be very similar to what Moog is doing today, but the differentiator is going to be here. Can they integrate with Topspin? Can they really provide the artist with a page that is almost like what the old MySpace used to be in, but that actually pays artists in a way? Do you think that's a bit more exciting as a proposition?
I don't think the Topspin style integration bit's the exciting bit. I think it's getting back to what the Beats team did. Yeah. So, they brought a sexiness and a star power to, a pretty dry thing of high-end headphones, which, only audiophiles want. But, by having those headphones featured in music videos, artists and celebrities wearing them, that was probably as important as the headphones sounding really good, to be honest with you. Yeah. And, whether you can do that with it's technically something a bit drier as a streaming music service is open to question. But one of the things I imagine they probably will do is tying in the hardware with the service. So you're buying a pair of Beats headphones for $300, add $90 for 2 years or a year subscription or however they would do it. Yeah. And certainly every kind of Beats product, whether that's the headphones or whether that's their new Bluetooth connected speakers, I imagine will have some kind of, months or 2 month trial of the service. So I think that's something they have got, is the sexiness, the star power, and that kind of almost like mobile first kind of angle of the tie-in with the hardware. But yeah, there's some pretty serious competition out there entrenched. Yeah,
I think very much a factor about this is that music streaming is not an industry where you can just be competent. You have to be absolutely spectacular, and you have to do something very, very different to stand out from the crowd. And until they do that, they won't be successful.
Especially from a technology point of view as well. That's the thing. I think so many people forget this, but one of the reasons why Spotify is so successful is because A, the client is easy to use, and B, it's really quick. Like, you press play and it starts playing straight away. Like, all streaming music services up to the point that Spotify launched had you press play and it would sit there buffering and loading, and it's it's going to play. Like, Spotify is different from that. You've got to have such a high base of technology, and obviously maybe they can do that, but it kind of remains to be seen. Yeah. I also think that the mooted Topspin integration is not a mass market feature in any way, shape or form. Yeah. Like merch and deluxe products absolutely have a niche, and it's potentially a quite important niche, but it's a niche. It's not a mainstream thing. And what they're talking about, their whole sort of rhetoric is we're going to take streaming mainstream. It's well, okay, that's fine and that's great, but that's not the way you're going to do that. Yeah. Maybe potentially some sort of Beats integration, sort of really trying to harness that brand might be a way of doing it. But then also personally, I have kind of long-term questions about how long Beats as a brand is going to be that relevant, because it's a fashion brand. It's a thing that's working right now, but people will move on very quickly because unless they move with that sort of trends, it's a trends-based market. That's why it's working. It's not necessarily going to be cool forever. So they've got to kind of there's a lot of challenges that I think they face.
Absolutely, and Duncan, from a strategy perspective as well, you covered a lot of technology through your work at Wired and your freelance work. How do you feel about the way that this announcement was made as well? Just because a lot of startups that work in the music space, especially heavily funded ones like this one is going to be, prefer to go in a kind of a stealth mode until they have at least some sort of a skeleton of a UI that they can showcase alongside the announcement and actually have something to show. Like, the MySpace came out with a demo of what their prospective design was going to be, even if the service itself wasn't going to be launched for a few months after that. Do you think it creates too much pressure on a V1 to be actually a great working product and allows less space for iteration on the product?
Perhaps. I mean, I think David answered this best earlier, actually, to be honest, when he said that they've assembled an incredible hype team.
Yeah.
And if you've got that, you may as well use it. I think it's very much a smart thing to do, especially with the integration with Topspin is an interesting feature. Whether it becomes successful or not, it is an interesting feature, and it is their differentiation. So being able to talk about that as early as possible. And especially with somebody like Ian Rogers, who does tend to speak very openly about what he's doing at any one time, it was probably going to come out sooner or later anyway. So it's better for it to come out on their terms with their hype than leaking otherwise. In fact, I think some of this was leaked, wasn't it? Some of it.
I think Ian accidentally leaked it.
Yeah. So there you go. That answers the question.
Accidentally.
Yeah.